Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us today. Thank you for waiting. Really appreciate it. I'm going to introduce the next session right now. And everyone's ready. Everyone's so behaved today. Thank you so much. Okay, this one is from SEO to GEO. And this session is moderated by Peter Sloterdijk, the CMO of GIST. Would you please give him and a nice round of applause for the next session. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Happy day 2 of Possible. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Peter Sloterdijk. I'm the CMO of GIST, a brand visibility platform focused on organic optimization and paid amplification in AI. Pardon me. And I am joined here by this fantastic panel that I will quickly introduce. Michelle Tobin to my left here is the Chief Revenue Officer of GIST and brings more than 20 years of experience building businesses across the advertising ecosystem. Let's see, Garrett Sloan next to her is Ad Age's Senior Editor of AI and Technology. He has worked in newspapers from Albany to New York City and small towns in between. He has also worked at every single advertising industry trade publication that matters.
That's right.
Rhonda Hyatt is the Global CEO of M&C Saatchi Consulting and leads the strategic direction, operational management, and client partnerships that drive commercial impact for the business. And Matt Kershaw leads client solutions at Noble People, an independent media agency based in New York, focused on helping brands grow through creative, full-funnel media. Fantastic. Thanks you all for joining me. As a starting point, one of the things I'm going to do is reject the premise of the title of our platform here, from SEO to GEO. That indicates that we'd be walking away from SEO, and in fact, we're not walking away from SEO, we're inviting GEO to the party, generative engine optimization. And so in that context, the discovery landscape is changing. We are adding this new context, this new idea of generative engine optimization to the experience, and discovery now means being recommended by AI or included in an answer by the LLMs. And that's a fundamentally different system than the one we've been so accustomed to for the last very long while. And so as a starting point, I think we have to start by redefining discovery. What does it look like? What does it mean to think about brand discovery overall? And so, Garrett, if I can start with you, what are the most significant shifts you're seeing in how brands are approaching discovery right now?
Well, first, thank you for having me. Great to speak here with Portrait and everyone on the panel, so good to be here. And as far as GEO, something that we cover so closely at Ad Age, we've been covering it probably for 2 years now, and it's coming up as just like this trending, every company. What's the biggest thing about it is, first of all, there's money there. Companies like Profound, Adobe bought SEMrush, talking like billion-dollar companies that are promising to show brands how they appear on ChatGPT or how they appear on Gemini, and the way we search these platforms is changing. It's like all natural language, so brands have to figure out, oh, how am I appearing there, obviously. And that's, I think brands are just starting to grapple with that, and they're changing the way that they organize their information online. That's it. Their strategies to digital are changing. How they organize, how they label products in their product feeds, everything that they do is shifting. So there's a lot happening. That's what I would say. But I would also ask, is it GEO?
Or is it AEO?
Is it AEO, AIEO, AAAO?
Listen, as an industry, I don't think we've decided yet, right?
Yeah, let's hash that out.
Yeah, so from my perspective, GEO seems to be prominent in terms of the language that people are using, but I still see AEO quite frequently. AIEO I haven't seen as often, because that sounds like a nursery rhyme, but I do think that there's a little bit of a battle between GEO and AEO to be debated, that we can, I'm sure, return to at another time. Michelle, next to you, I'm interested to see from your perspective, how has AI changed what brand visibility means in general to brands and their audiences?
Yeah, well, I mean, at its most basic, SEO is about how am I ranking? Where am I showing up in 1 of 10 blue links? Now it's all about how does AI understand my brand? What do they believe about my brand? And is it the thing that I want consumers to know about? And so it really is AI synthesizing everything it knows about your brand that it can find across sources that it trusts and believes, and deciding whether or not to put you in a recommendation. So where a consumer used to choose on their own which one of those 10 blue links to pick from, the LLM is making a recommendation. And it's really important that you understand if you're showing up, and if not, why not? Because otherwise you're invisible in what is now a consumer's purchasing journey of research, decisioning, and purchase.
You talk about the blue links. I always think about the idea of keywords to questions. We used to be really focused on keywords, and now everything is questions based. And because there's 200 different ways you can ask, where do I go on vacation this summer? Figuring out how to structure your content and identify which version of that question you should show up in the answer for. It's not a fine science, right? It's very much kind of a Wild West. So Rhonda, from your perspective, when you're advising brands right at the beginning of the experience, where do you start? Where do you actually begin this this conversation around GEO?
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to pick up on what Michelle said because I think it's really important. When I started, I'm not going down memory lane here, but when I started 20 years ago, I started at an agency and we were working with Procter & Gamble, and they were very well known for the first moment of truth. Anybody who's worked with P&G knows the first moment of truth, right? When you have to have that discovery at shelf. You needed to learn, you needed to unpick. Then 10 years later, 15 years later, we went to ZMOT, right, which is Google, and when you're searching and understanding that behavior. And now I think we're moving to AMOT, right, or GMOT, whatever we want to say, because we're now backing that up. And I think what's changed situationally is that we now have a lot more understanding of consumer context, of behaviors, of need states, what's really important to them. And so it's not about showing up just with keywords. Keywords are still important. Yep. We can't get rid of those. But it's about pairing that with the behavior. And so we still have almost even more important emphasis now on consumer behavior, on contextualization. And so when we think about that from a brand standpoint, we have to marry that up, understanding that context and consumer behavior with our brand storytelling, with our execution. So it's actually, I think it's more complex and harder now.
It definitely is. I think the idea of single channel still is something I reject, of like, you can't just pay attention to one aspect, right? So GEO on its own isn't going to do the trick. Right. And you're right, there's multiple layers, there's multiple contexts that we have to think about in order to have this conversation effectively around where does GEO start, where does it end, how do we incorporate it into what we're doing. So Matt, from your perspective, I'm interested that, like, does AI fundamentally change the right audience, right time that kind of Rhonda was talking about? Is it adjusting that equation? What do you think?
Yeah, so I think I'm going to build on Michelle and Rhonda because they both kind of hit on some of these points. But, you know, I think that equation started to shift a little bit even before AI, right? So for the last 15 plus years, I think media has been kind of over-engineered and over-optimized towards the platforms and our
efficiency.
Algorithmic overlords, right? We care about impressions, we care about reach, we care about clicks, which are oftentimes defined by some like shoddy methodology in the first place. And so I think what's interesting though is like AI is sort of forcing a welcome and needed correction back to brands needing to be a little bit more human again. Because the things that the LLMs pick up, to Michelle's points, right, are social conversations, are reviews and recommendations, are social content that is kind of going viral or that people are talking about. And so those are the same things that people respond to, right? So we're no longer forgetting about the people on the other side of the equation, which is really kind of fresh. And so, yeah, AI isn't just like surfacing brands. It's actually evaluating them in real time, recommending them. So it just becomes really, really important to sort of shift media strategy to focus on making choices that are going to generate some organic conversation. And I think that's how we kind of approach planning now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The right moment, right, the moments that matter, if you will, as a concept, that principle hasn't changed, just where they are, how we reach them, those tactics are adjusting.
That's right.
To meet this moment around what we're doing now. So in that context, one of the things I always struggle with from a brand marketing point of view is I feel like I've lost control of the narrative a little bit, like that I don't have as much power to influence how my brand is perceived and the story that gets told on my brand's behalf in one way or another. And so what does that look like? How do we influence, control, have an impact on the way that our brand story is told? Rhonda, when you're thinking about your clients and the conversations that you're having, which I'm sure have gotten a lot more interesting over the last 6 months or so,
Sure.
how do you help them build that narrative when you know that you're at least partially optimizing for AI?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I don't think brands control their narrative. A lot today, brands' narratives are being told about how culture actually feels about a brand, and they're controlling a lot of the brand narrative. So I think it's actually about understanding that relationship between what culture and consumers and audiences are saying and thinking, and then how brands are then showing up in those spaces. And when you layer in AI and you have to think about that mass collection and all of that context and all of that noise, we really have to sort of spot the signal before the noise. We need to really understand, what are those things that are going to move culture forward, what's going to move our brand forward, and how do we get that timing right? So I don't think it's about controlling the narrative. I think it's about being ahead of it and making sure that you're diversifying across the right channels, diversifying across the right places, and really connecting with the right audiences that you ultimately want to.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The idea that sentiment plays such an important role in the way GEO works and the way the LLMs are surfacing your brand. I like your point around meeting the customers where they are and figuring out exactly what kinds of story, what version of your story you want to tell to that particular audience. Makes a lot of sense to me. Michelle, when you're thinking about that same concept, that same topic, what do you think, or what are you seeing actually influences how AI is representing your brand in any context?
Yeah, I mean, some of it was what Matt already mentioned. The LLMs are trained on the content that is published across the web. So whether that's editorial content, reviews, forums, discussion sites, publishers that the LLMs consider have authority in your category. So if you're being written about in Wirecutter, if you're being talked about on Reddit, if you are, it actually, the content that is not on your site matters more than the content that is on your site. Of course, you need to structure that in a way that the LLMs can understand, but you really need to be consistent in your brand language in all of those places in as much as you can. So whatever you're publishing, if you have a Reddit strategy, you're trying to be consistent about that. What doesn't work is what people are probably, the first instinct, I'm just gonna publish a lot more content. Sure. But volume without authority is not going to move the needle.
Certain volume without authority is not going to move the needle, and volume without strategy isn't going to move the needle, right? I always find it interesting to think about how that volume question, like our inclination, like, oh, I'll just create more, that seems to be a symptom of something that we've had for a long time. That was the answer on social for a while. It was the answer in search for a while. I'll bid on every keyword that could possibly ever exist as part of my brand. And missing that strategy, that kind of more specific component. Garrett, when you're thinking who's doing this well, what are they doing differently? What are you seeing in the market in terms of kind of behavior of the brands showing up against this idea of influencing the way LLMs see their brand?
Well, I see a lot of the beauty, health brands. They really want to have authority, like Cetaphil, say. They want to have, when you go for dermatological advice, they want that exact language that shows up when you're questioning open a ChatGPT. And they have been repurposing their strategy to do it. I just saw the other day, North Face redid their whole product catalog so that when you're searching natural language for their shoes, it's not just description of hiking shoe, it's good for gripping rocks, and their language is changing specifically across their entire product catalog. So you're seeing a lot of brands start to do that. The ones that do it well, I guess it is hard to track, which is why you see all these companies coming up, the Profounds and the SEMrushes trying to do it. And even that, they're not getting the exact terminology. What are people searching when these things come up? What exactly triggers your brand? I think there's so much that goes into it that it's not exact science yet. But those are sort of the things I'm seeing out there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I always come back to the idea of access, and we're talking about like what drives authority in the LLMs, and the more access the LLMs have to the relevant content, whether it's on your website or other high authority publications, is part of what gives them authority in the LLMs, right? So if it's behind a paywall, if it's behind an access point, it's harder for the LLMs to get to, so it has lower authority in that context. When you're thinking about paid media, to augment that, to have an impact on that, to try and game the system, if you will, what does that look like for you, Matt, and your clients as you guys are thinking about the paid media side of this equation?
Yeah, I wish there was a clean answer. I don't think there's a single lever that you can pull to like all of a sudden take control of your brand narrative in these LLM environments. But where we do see paid media strategy working is when we're trying to think outside of rectangles and squares, right? So figure out a partnership that has lots of sort of organic and social and earned components. For a CPG brand at Noble recently, we just did a partnership with the Chicago Fire FC, the MLS team. Yeah. But beyond just like your jersey sponsorship and signage in the stadium, we wanted to be thoughtful about some experiences in the stadium, some product like taste testing experiences, some opportunities to capture social content. Because the more that we can do that, the more that we can sort of like actually get some real conversation going that hopefully some of these places that we know the AI platforms are reading into are picking up on. And so I think Michelle said it, it's like if nobody is talking about the brand, then the LLMs have no place to look and sort of get information. And so the role of paid is about making media choices that are going to kind of punch above their weight and hopefully expand beyond just like what a media plan looks like.
Certainly. I feel like I'm seeing the words added value way more frequently in the media plans that are coming my way. Because it doesn't fit into the neat rectangles and squares, right? Like the traditional boxes of media, but adding to your media buys so that every piece of the puzzle works together more effectively to drive awareness is a big key of big part of the puzzle, I should say. I think it's kind of interesting to be talking about paid in the context of a GEO conversation. Michelle, I want to kind of go to you. Why are we talking about paid in the context of GEO? We're talking about organic optimization, but paid plays what role?
I mean, I would say why wouldn't we? Because whether it's search or social or every channel before that, paid and organic work together. You need to have complementary strategies, and one will augment the other. Interestingly, talking about sort of finding places that punch above their weight. Every publisher we talk to these days, all of our partners are saying that as advertisers are coming to them, they're saying, well, what is your GEO strategy, Mr. Publisher? Because I want my dollars to do double duty. I want to reach your audience, but I also want to know that by buying with you perhaps as an advertorial, that it will influence my visibility in the LLMs. And so I think you see publishers like Future and Time offering packages, advertorial and GEO, and we'll measure your visibility before and after because we are a highly cited source in this category. So we believe we can move the needle for you, and I think you're going to see that a lot more.
Yep. I expect you're right. Rhonda, when in that same vein, in the conversations with your clients, are you thinking about trust in the context of paid media, and does that have a negative impact, a positive impact, no impact at all on the erosion or the intensity of trust?
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes down to trust, it's also about what message and what you're amplifying and what you're saying. And it's really like garbage in, garbage out. If you haven't actually gotten the depth and the meaning and the right messaging around your brand that is going to resonate with that audience, you're amplifying something that's not going to work. I mean, it's just not going to work. And then you're eroding trust. And what's really important is we think about brands building now trust with agents and with consumers. We have to make sure we're showing up in the right way. So again, it's not just a one-dimensional answer. We really have to take all of that context into question.
I think you're absolutely right. There's, again, multiple layers to be thinking about, and you can't just focus on one. Garrett, from your, again, observational point of view, are platforms being transparent enough on this subject of trust? Are platforms being transparent enough? And should we as marketers push harder for more information? Right now, the LLMs are black box adjacent in terms of what information we can get out of them. Thoughts on that?
You were asking before about why we're talking about paid and organic. Talk about paid on ChatGPT now, because that's part of it. and that is going to factor into AEO there. If you have an ad campaign on ChatGPT, are you hoping you're going to get some more information from OpenAI about what prompts are going in? If you're a big sponsor, you will get some information. From what I understand, there's an aggregate. It's not the exact query, but there's black boxes all over. Gemini or Google's a very black box now. Keywords are going away. We can actually talk about that. They're changing the way you run whole keyword campaigns, where those are not what they used to be. So
And a lot more expensive.
And more expensive. So yeah, advertisers need more data where they can get it, obviously, and it's going to be harder and harder to come by, I think, because they are getting more black box.
It's very fair. Matt, something I'm struggling with from a marketing point of view is I've spent most of my career, at least in digital media, thinking about click-through rates, thinking about engagement, thinking about how am I getting people to my destination, website, landing page, social, etc. We're in a zero-click world now. I say that question marky because are we? But the idea here is that we're moving towards a zero-click world. What does that do to the media landscape? How should we be thinking about things differently?
It's a refreshing change, isn't it, to not have to say CTR, 60 times a day.
My reports got kind of empty, though, right?
No, it's definitely disconcerting when you look at it. But look, I think not just like realizing that it is a zero-click world now is costing a lot more than just a few clicks to your website. It's really costing brand influence and consideration and all the things that we've been talking about. I think I saw something like 60% of searches are now kind of ending without a click to a brand website, thanks to Gemini's sort of like AI-generated auto summary and a whole handful of other things that you kind of see when you search for something now. And so the idea that everything has to drive a click or drive traffic is kind of breaking down. It's just the reality of the situation. And a lot of these decisions are happening much earlier in the process, right? So I think the risk is, you're not a part of the consideration set if you're not just like adopting to this new reality. Internally, we talk a lot about brands need to be on what we call the day one list. It's a very high percentage of people who are considering a product or a service that when they're ready to go look, it could be 3 months, it could be 6 months, it could be 9 months down the road, but a very high percentage of the time, they're going to start by looking for something that they've already heard of, or they already have an association with, or are considering. And so neglecting the importance of that, still chasing clicks, is not advised.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. In the interest of time, I'm going to keep us moving towards our predictions, thinking about what's coming next, where we're going, which is always a lovely way to end a conversation like this. In terms of what comes next, I'm curious on a broad scale what happens if brands don't adapt, right? I'm seeing some folks dig in their heels and say, okay, great, I'm going to spend more on search campaigns, or I have these tried, true, and tested methods that I'm going to lean all the way into because that's my safe space. And there seems to be a little fear driving some of the decision making, or fear of the unknown at the very least, driving some of the decision making. So Garrett, I'm going to start with you. What happens in 12 to 18 months from now? Who's most at risk? What are you kind of predicting about this space? And what happens to those that get left behind?
12 to 18 months, I think it's real. I think people are going to first, immediately, I think Google just benefits, Google and Amazon, because they're easy to put your money to and you're going to get visibility there. But my boldest prediction may be, let's see where ChatGPT is in 18 months, if it's still the same type of platform that it is because of its ads and where it's going. So I think you're going to see a lot more commercialization there. I think you're going to see brands are going to try and develop a lot of AI products on their own so that the visibility is not totally dependent on those platforms. So you're going to see more brands developing their own AI chatbots and trying to do commerce within them, and so much more.
So much more indeed. I always think it's funny to use 12 to 18 months as a time frame in the context of AI, where like 12 to 18 days, I don't know what OpenAI is going to look like.
Yeah, like it could change it, and it does every second.
Correct, so. Exactly. And you on the reporting side of media, I have no envy. That it's so much information all of the time can get kind of overwhelming, at least as a reader. Rhonda, when you think about what part of brand storytelling that AI can't replace, I'm particularly interested. Listen, we're all using AI in 1,000 different ways. What is sacred? What do you hold on to?
Yeah, so I'm not going to use the A word, not agentic. I'm not going to use authenticity because that would be an easy answer, right? To say it's all about authenticity, but
Have
we
I
all
said
know.
that?
I know it's like C tier. We just can't say it 100 times a day. I think AI is really going to open up new creative outlets and really explode the way that we can creatively connect with people. Because the agents are doing jobs for consumers. You know, I think we in the industry talk a lot about everything that AI is doing for us to serve our clients. But when you take it from a consumer perspective and you really think about the way that they're embedding AI into their lives and the way that they're working and behaving, there's such an opportunity for new experiences where creativity, I think, is going to have another renaissance moment. That's what I'm really excited about. So the tech's not going away. I think like we're all going to agree on that. But really letting creativity shine and that connection, I think we'll stop using authenticity in a way now of like just saying the same thing over and over and talking about human emotions to really human experience. And that's what I'm excited about.
You say human experience. I agree with you. I think I'm watching a swell of interest in real life experiences, real life events. We're seeing an increase in store traffic. We're seeing an increase in experiential events on behalf of brands. It's not that we're eschewing the integration of technology in what we're doing from a consumer point of view, but we are now kind of it's affecting what we're looking for.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's super interesting. Michelle, if you are starting today, looking at the near future, 12 to 18 days ahead of you, what's the first move? Where do you begin?
Well, look, if you're a brand that hasn't really dived into this yet, get a baseline. Understand, I mean, you should be searching across LLMs against the questions that you think your consumers will care about. Use one of the many tools. Garrett mentioned some, shameless plug, just GEO, we can do it too.
I forgot to mention just by name, of course.
Thank you. And look, you can get the baseline, but I think more importantly, the thing that we focus on is the why. What are the signals that are feeding into whether you're showing up or not showing up, how you're being ranked, how the LLMs are understanding your brand, and then very specific actions on what can I do that'll have the nearest term, highest impact in terms of content I can create, publications that have high authority and are highly cited by the LLMs that I should partner with.
Like Ad Age.
Like Ad Age. Maybe I need a Reddit strategy. I talked to a farmer brand the other day, super conservative brand that you would never think of Reddit before, that now has a very active Reddit strategy because they're like, we need to try to shape the conversation. So I think you need to get in the game, and there's a real opportunity for challenger brands right now that jump on board and try to help shape their visibility to show up and punch way above their weight with against legacy brands that maybe are still trying to figure out, hey, who in the organization owns this?
Who's responsible for it? Yeah, which is an open-ended question for a lot of folks. Where does something like a GEO practice sit? Is it squarely with the SEO team? If I don't have an SEO team, where does that go? And if it's everyone's responsibility, then do we find ourselves in a place where it's no one's responsibility, no one's really picking it up? So yeah, lots of good questions to answer on that front. Matt, from your perspective, what do you see coming next? Where are things going? And what does paid media look like?
Yeah, so I'm not going to make a super bold prediction, but I am going to drop another hilarious word, which is, I caution against chasing the next shiny object because everybody remembers the metaverse. And everybody needed a metaverse strategy. Hundreds of thousands of dollars of professional, smart people's time was being wasted sprinting to the boardroom to figure out how are we going to show up in the metaverse, and that was like the biggest flash in the pan in media history probably. And so I'm not sure it's something like that. I think that AI platforms will continue to evolve extremely, extremely quickly. But I just come back to the idea of like thinking about media as a opportunity to make choices that are going to get your brand talked about. It's really kind of that simple, moving away from some of these more tried and true things that we've seen so much of. And for us, it's honestly like Christmas every day. It's kind of a blessing in disguise. Like, this is what made us want to become marketers in the first place, right? Like, do stuff that's fun, do stuff that's creative, partner with the brand to, make a lasting memory and ultimately like influence somebody that they need what you offer. And for a while, I think we moved away from that, and I'm looking forward to getting back to that.
Yeah, reinvention back to some of the good things that we know, right? And maybe, again, tactically doing them a little bit differently, but the principles still apply. I think from a thematic point of view, things I'm kind of taking away from this conversation, GEO can't stand alone, right? It is part of an ecosystem. It is a piece of the puzzle, but not something that it can be on its own. There's no single channel answer. And we all don't have every answer, right? We have a lot more to learn. There's a lot of open questions still in front of us. One of the things we didn't get to here, but has come up in a number of conversations here during the conference, is measurement. What does measurement look like in the context of AI? When media click-through is different. When we're talking about GEO as is a good score 60% out of 100? Is a good score 100? What am I aiming towards? Where's my baseline? Where's my benchmark? So we have a lot more information to gather for sure. Thank you all very, very much for the interesting conversation. Really appreciate it. Thank you guys for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.